last time you were here too.
I'm always tired.
Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Worked you too hard?
No, I don't know what it is really.
You're anxious to go out and start working hard.
Yeah, we've been off since we got back from Europe in December. We played a couple of shows over Christmas, but since then we haven't really done anything. So, there's no better rehearsal than playing live. We've always found, but so we've just had to sort of use our imaginations and not go crazy. The last 2 months, 3 months.
Well, the Horseshoe gig was pretty hot
Hmm.
last month.
Yep.
At the end of last week of December or something.
Yeah, just after Boxing Day,
Yeah.
I think. Yeah, just before New Year's. Yeah, it was good. It was good to be able to play because we hadn't played since the end of November, so kind of gave us something to do.
Don't like sitting around getting bored. The first thing I thought of when I heard this record is just the singing, the guitars. It's mean. It's like really mean stuff. I mean, this is if you could anthropomorphize this and you met this person. If this band was a distinct person walking down the street, you'd want to walk on the other side of the street.
It'd be Phyllis Diller. Yeah, well, I guess we weren't feeling too mean at the time. I think we were all pretty high-spirited, actually. But, yeah, I guess we went after it in this record.
Are you guys angry about anything? Because there's it's just so, the sounds, the guitars, everything is so almost vicious that it's like you guys are in a really bad mood and coming out ready for a real punch-up.
It's this damn recession. It's got us all down. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. It's weird that you say that. I haven't heard that yet, but that's cool. That's fine.
You like the vicious sound?
Yeah, sure.
The take no prisoners kind of sound.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. The songs, I don't know.
The other thing when I like the EP that Ken Greer produced, the demos, and I really liked the first album. Thought it was great. And then when I heard this, I thought, geez, those things were really amateur by comparison. All of a sudden, those things, I mean, this is just so much more sophisticated. The recording and the playing is very, very sophisticated comparatively.
Yeah, I think like anything, we're just a little further down the road, and we've played a lot and been able to be relatively disciplined as far as keeping the songwriting going all the time. And so it was just kind of natural, and we were also a lot more comfortable with the whole situation because we knew Don very well this time. I mean, it was comfortable last time, but this time it was even better, so that we were looking forward to it, and so, everyone felt really good down there, and it was just kind of a natural progression, I think.
And up to here, we, a lot of the songs on that we'd had kicking around for a number of years, So this newest record is basically just a representation of, the year and a half since then. We've been on the road, and as Paul said, we keep writing all the time, if for no other reason than therapeutic value, and we keep our ears open on the road, and we try not to let too many ideas slip through the cracks. So when we brought all that down to New Orleans, and with the sort of environment we were in, the studio we were in was, completely what we'd all been sort of dreaming about all these years. It was very low key. It was in a big house, without the double glass and, in the sort of sterile environment that some studios can give you. It was really laid back, lots of plants, windows where you could actually look outside, and, hot, spicy Cajun food. It was just like really relaxed. And, that coupled with, the songs, it made for a really good experience.
If I hadn't been told, I would have thought that all of the songs were written down in New Orleans with that kind of hot, sweaty environment, because these are all really very southern sounding songs to me, very blues, very south oriented, and I know that with the exception of Little Bones, I think they were all written prior to going down to New Orleans to record, were they not?
Generally, I don't know if they were all finished, but the ideas, a lot of the ideas were already there. Yeah. And I guess another difference about this record was, with Up to Here, we recorded 16 songs, picked the best 11. And this time, after about a week, we knew exactly what the album, we didn't know exactly how it would read in what order, but we know which 12 songs were going to be the best ones. So we concentrated just on those songs. So, and I think just I guess it does, I can hear it, the why people think or think of a Southern influence. But I think that's just kind of innate in the band. For some reason, when all our influences kind of combine and everyone's playing a tune, it turns out to be, kind of a swampy thing.
Did they change much? I mean, you had these songs which I assume were written on the road for the most part, because that's mostly what you've been doing for the last, since you put Up to Here out.
Mm-hmm.
Did they change a lot in the environment of New Orleans? I mean, did that have an effect on you?
Not so much, I think. No more than being in the studio changed them. I think, sometimes you get a song that works well live, so you figure when you go down to the studio, it'll just be a matter of, doing a one-off and you'll have it. And oftentimes those are the songs, it's sort of like putting, a square peg into a round hole. Sometimes you have to carve off some of the corners to make it fit in the in the studio version. You have to sort of sometimes make some concessions or a few changes in the arrangement or something like that, or maybe beef up an intro or something like that, But I think one thing we've always tried not to do is when we demo songs or try them out, we don't try and go for really polished versions, because oftentimes you get those down in the studio and you're trying to beat your demo, and it can be really frustrating. So we go down with the thought in mind that no song is above a rewrite or a change or two. So when you go in the studio, I just think you start whatever, maybe editing a bit or adding a few things. I think that's natural.
But as you said, I guess the truth is that it's not that the South, the recording it in the South did so much as that's just the sound of the band, I suppose, is sort of steeped in that sound. And I guess, I'm sure you've been asked this 100 times, but where do a bunch of white guys from Kingston get that sort of Southern, that lust for the blues swamp sound that you've developed and made your own?
I don't know. I don't know if there's a real affinity, with that sound. It seems like, I was talking to a friend of mine from the Sioux, and he was always talking about when he was growing up, the big bands in the Sioux were like, Skinner and 38 Special, or is that the name? Yeah, like real Southern rock sound was big, and I think that's big a lot in Canada for some odd reason. And a lot of the bands that you see coming out of Canada now are at least buying into that a little bit. Colin James and Jeff Healey and bands like that seem to feel a real affinity with either the blues or Southern boogie or something like that. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's our whole Acadian, heritage or something. Not that I'm an Acadian or anything, but I don't know. It's weird.
Well, because the ultimate example, I suppose the band was the originals of doing it that very. I mean, you wouldn't believe those guys were from Ontario.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
White bread Ontario. You would have figured those out, and only one of them was.
Mm-hmm.
So
we really enjoy it down there. I mean, we figure you're going to go record a record. You got 6 weeks to spend in a place. You can either go maybe to Scarborough or something like that, which is fine, but it's only 40 minutes away, or you can go someplace where you might have a relaxed, sort of interesting time in a completely alien environment. So that's why we picked Memphis. And this time it was either we were going to go to Woodstock, New York, or we were going to go down to New Orleans. That was our choice. So we figured, well, we'll go to New Orleans. It's a long way away, and none of us have really spent any time there. And the food and the people, and it just makes for a nice 6 weeks.
Well, you went to Memphis originally because Don was working out of that studio. It was Arden Studio, was it?
He had worked there before, yeah, and that was the same type of thing, though. I think we had a choice, like Don said, I know a good studio in Memphis, I know a good studio in New York, and I know a good studio somewhere else, and, it just interested us to go there. We'd prefer, I think, to go somewhere where we haven't been, somewhere where we haven't played, and Memphis and New Orleans both kind of fit the bill for that. Another thing I was going to say about the Southern thing, it seems that if you play rock and roll, you have to, it more or less is blues influenced, and if you play it with two guitars and a singer and a bass player and a drummer, then it's, I don't know, we wouldn't really be able to come out with any different sound than we come out with. So if people call it Southern, then that's what they did, obviously, I guess.
Well, no, it's obvious you're not trying to be Southern or anything like that. It's just natural. That's the sound you come out with. But the guitars, the two guitars are really working, really meshing well together. Do you think is that just the result of the touring that you've been doing?
I think that's definitely helped a lot. Yeah, because however it happens in a song, if Robbie has his part first, or if I have my part first, then we just kind of play around what the other guy's playing, try not to step on. I try not to step on what Robbie's doing, and you play with the other guys in the band, and just kind of try and slide your part in there so that it helps drive the tune. So yeah, I think it's getting better as far as that kind of thing goes. I pay pretty close attention to what he's playing. I think he does the same. So just so as not to be repetitive.
I can't tell the difference between the two of you. I can't say, oh, that's Paul playing there. And I'm sure it's patently obvious to you.
I'm on the left. Robbie's on the right.
When facing your stereo.
When facing your stereo.
Is that the rule?
Yeah.
Oh, good. So now. But he does more of the lead breaks,
Yeah, he does the lead breaks. And they might come into the center, but just for a general rule, yeah, I'm left, he's right.
Okay. And that's when you're facing the stereo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaker left.
Okay. Now tell me a bit more about Lanois' house in New Orleans. It's quite an environment, I understand it. It's sort of the opposite of the Antiseptic studio, where you've got amps all over the place, and you can use a stairwell for an echo chamber and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Can you sort of give us an impression of what the studio's like?
I think it was haunted, actually. It was a really spooky place. It was this ancient old mansion. He had 27 billion square feet or something like that, and 19-foot high ceilings, and I could go on with lots of exaggerations, but it just opened up all kinds of options. It really sort of, when you walked in the door, the place reeked of experimentation, and we were completely into that. And yeah, so we all set up in the pool room, so we could shoot billiards in between, or shoot pool in between takes. We were all in one room recording, and then when it came time to doing sort of overdubs and stuff like that, there was a lot of latitude to put. At one point they played on one tune my vocals back through a guitar amp at the top of the stairs with two mics set up, one at the bottom of the stairs, and stuff like that. We didn't actually end up using that take because it sounded a bit cheesy, but that kind of stuff. Paul's amp was under the stairwell, and Robbie's was in another room, and the control room was sort of in the front vestibule of the house. There was no sort of, as I said, double glass or any of that kind of stuff. It was just, you go into the kitchen and make yourself a cup of tea or something. It was completely casual.
It's surprising, actually, because I think there was probably a lot of bleed all over the place. It wasn't really an Antiseptic recording, yet it does sound like a very precise recording throughout the thing.
Mm-hmm.
The guitars are really, each one is really separated and distinct, and it's funny for something that, as I say, was so casual like that it sounds like such a studied recording.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of bleeding. as a rule. I have no real problems with it, you know, like old jazz recordings or something like that. And over time, you know, in recording jazz and rock and roll, there was a big, you know, movement against that kind of stuff. You couldn't have anything like that. No bleeding, no alien sounds, you know, and there are no rules, obviously. So that's not a problem for us.
Were most of the songs done live, or more or less live?
We all played them together. And that was our philosophy in Memphis, you know, keep everything. You know, that's the way we always do it. So there'd be no point in sending Johnny and Gordon just get a bed track with the bass and drums. I mean, we try it with the band first, and we'll exhaust that possibility. And if a song, for some odd reason, isn't coming together, then maybe we'll go and try and build it the other way. But yeah, we keep everything. A lot of the vocals we kept from the initial tracking sessions in that pool room, you know. I'd just listen to them and say, well, I'm not going to sing that any better or any worse, depending on what I was after. And that was the same thing, I think, for anybody, really.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, you really went for it on a couple of, I was thinking of especially on Twist My Arm. I mean, there's a real deep heart vocal to it, you know.
Right.
And that's just, I guess, a lot of touring and
a lot of cigarettes. Yeah.
a lot of abuse in New Orleans.
Yeah, basically, it's important.
Maybe a bit about, about the cab driver and the Little Bones story.
Oh yeah, we were we were on our way to see a band at Tipitina's, and or maybe this was the cab driver in Chicago. I don't know. I listened too hard to these guys, but the one guy was saying, you know, down in New Orleans you got to make them cry, beg, and whine, you know, and you make the little girls cry. That was a guy in Chicago actually, and that kind of stuff. And you know, we were sort of saying, well, geez, I guess we don't, you know. But he had all these ideas about what you needed to do in New Orleans if you wanted to make it as a band, and making the little girls cry was a big part of it. So maybe that's what I went for.
And that's the substance of Little Bones?
Yeah, that was one. That was sort of one little part of it, of Little Bones. You know, that was sort of got the idea rolling, and yeah. Little Bones actually was the name of a cat in a Timothy Finley novel, Last of the Crazy People, which I thought was great, and that was what I was originally wanting to write a song about, but then got into this whole eating chicken thing, and so now I don't know what the hell it's about.
But you can almost feel the humidity in New Orleans when you hear the song. I imagine that must have. It just sounds like something that could only have been written down there.
Yeah, it came together pretty quickly. That was when we went to a rehearsal space for a week before we went into the studio. So right when we got down to New Orleans, it was in relatively run-down area with no air conditioning, and it was really hot. And we just decided to try something else, and that kind of came out of it.
Now we should talk about a couple of the other songs. I don't mean for you to explain the songs, because everybody's got to have their own different interpretations about them, but if there's anything that you remember anecdotal about recording them, or anything like Twist My Arm, as I mentioned, I thought the vocal was pretty vicious.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't, that song, I don't know where that came from, really. Lyrically, I just thought it was sort of one of those sort of deals, and live, when we play it, I usually sort of preface the song by saying, you know, if someone comes up to you and tells you they've got something for you that will, you know, blow your mind, then this is probably what you should say. And that's sort of the thinking that I had in mind when writing it. My girlfriend hates it, but I like it.
That's the important thing.
Yeah.
And Cordelia, which is we're talking a little literary reference here, some Shakespearean references.
Yeah, Bill Shakespeare. Yeah,
Obviously, a big influence on the band over the years is Shakespeare.
yeah. I don't know. I don't know. That song is, yeah. I guess the whole. I don't know, man.
Well, he was such a roots kind of writer. I always pictured him in the bayou,
hmm
all those things. Macbeth could have happened in any of those clubs down there. Now you did 200 shows in North America last year. What did that do to you? I guess it can do one of two things. It kind of pull you really close together, or you just almost explode from that much intense playing and being so close to another couple of guys for that long.
Yeah, it wasn't really too much of a problem. I guess I would say it pulled us close together if it didn't embarrass me to say it. But, jeez, man. Sorry. Not that close. But anyway, it was, most of the places that we played, we hadn't played before, or we were playing them with, all of a sudden, with an audience. The places that we had played before, it was a lot better. So the whole kind of thing was definitely wasn't boring or in any way negative. It was all a good time. Obviously, we got, kind of tired and stuff like that, but we always managed to have a good time when we're playing, change up the set, try new tunes if there happens to be a couple sitting around. So, we like to keep it interesting. If we know that, with this tour, it's going to be the same type of thing, playing lots and lots of shows in different towns, one-nighters everywhere. And, we're going to do the same kind of thing, just keep things interesting all the time, bring the sticks maybe.
It's a never-ending stag party.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty weird.
All right, a couple of stories. What happens on the road there? What's it like?
Well, we usually pull into a town, get lost for at least a good couple of hours, finally show up at the club, do a sound check, eat, go back to our hotels, shower up, go play the gig, come home, drink a lot of beer, watch whatever's on TV, go to bed, get up the next morning, do it all over again. That's pretty much as glamorous as it gets. We find a lot, we went to Europe and we're not real big explorers, but we did our best to see what there was to see. We had 45 minutes in London to look around, and see the sights. So we jumped in a cab and saw, Buckingham Palace and Big Ben, and that was about it. And that's about the amount of time we're afforded to, to drink in the culture of the places we're in. Or that kind of stuff, and so I don't know. It's sort of it's an interesting lifestyle because there are very few decisions to make when you're on the road. You got someone usually telling you when you're supposed to get up and when you're supposed to eat and when you're supposed to go on stage and when you're supposed to come off stage. So all your crucial decisions are made for you by someone else. So it's I don't know. It's weird.
And they get the beer for you, and they get the girls for you, and anything like that. And we have to do it just to attack and enjoy.
No, we get the girls for ourselves, and usually come up empty. Maybe if someone else was getting them for us, that doesn't happen.
We have no one that's capable.
I think you got to change road managers. I sense a problem here. I'll bring it all back. Great guitars. Well, the great guitars throughout the whole album, I think. We'll bring it all back. I was just listening to it again just before I came over here. Just stellar.
Oh, thanks. That one took probably the longest of any of the tunes, guitar-wise. So thanks.
Why is that?
I don't know. It's just a really... it's a feel type of tune that we had never played live. But we all knew what we wanted it to sound like, but for some reason when we were trying it just really wasn't coming together, and then so we kind of laid off it for about a week in the middle of recording, and near the end of the third week, we decided to give it another try, and it worked out. We were pretty happy about that because it was looking like it wasn't going to, like we were just going to kind of forget it. So, yeah, it really came together, I think.
Mm-hmm. I wonder how all of these things are going to do on radio if these songs are just too real for radio programmers to sit up and take notice of these things. But I'm sure you don't give that much consideration.
No, no, definitely not. Not when we're writing them, and not when we're recording them. I mean, I don't know if there really is anything for the radio or not. I guess we'll find out. I see us having an easier time getting our music played on the radio in Canada because I think Canadian radio is a little more, accepting of things that maybe wouldn't work in the mainstream American radio format. But we'll see. They've picked a song in America different. They picked Three Pistols to be their lead track at radio in America and Little Bones up here. And we'll see what happens. But radio is not a big concern of mine personally. Obviously, it's nice, A, to hear your song on a radio, first and foremost. And, and B, if it gets more people to hear it, then that's great. That's the idea. But there are other, avenues that you can pursue if that doesn't happen,
Well, it's all about exposure, and I guess you prefer to do it the club route, and the club route's perfectly valid. It's just a lot more time-consuming than you can get a bunch of people to play it on the radio and or get a video played. Then a lot of people all of a sudden become familiar with it and then want to go to the shows, which leads me to another question. I think the Hip are one of the consummate bar bands, and to see the sweat hitting the side of the stage, on at the Horseshoe, I think is where you belong. And I'd almost be sorry to see you show up at the Gardens or something like that, But do you think? I think it's probably bound to happen that you're going to transfer up to, or you're going to transcend to arenas and stuff like that. And do you think there'll be any problem transferring from the club, that sort of feel and sound that you have from a club to an arena, bigger stages?
I don't think we really think about it because the progression is anything but fast. I mean, we play the Horseshoe one night and then go out to some festival in Saskatoon or something and play to 6,000 people. And as far as the amps and stuff, usually no matter how big the stage is, are usually the same distance apart, not that different from the stage at the Horseshoe. So for us, it's not that much different. There's way more people, but we like to get our gig together no matter who we're in front of. It's the five of us and we're playing and so that the crowd comes into it after. If we're on stage and everything's cooking and everything's going well, then it doesn't really matter whether we're playing to 10 or 10,000.
But the ambience has got to be different playing in front of just the way you hear yourself and you hear each other. And there is a crowd there, at the Horseshoe, there's people 5 feet in front of you jumping up and down. You can feel them sweating. It's hot. You can see them. I don't know. What's it like on a stage where the people are way out there?
I don't know. It's just, I don't know,
It's really a varied thing, too, because just when you mentioned the Horseshoe, when I think of playing there, we all really like playing there, but when you first step on stage and start to play, with people that close to you, it's kind of a different kind of nervous experience than if you're playing, with thousands of people who are maybe a little further away or maybe just as close. But when you have, I guess what I'm trying to say is every gig is regardless of the size of the gig, there's a different thing about the actual venue and the placement of the crowd that either makes you feel nervous or feel good. And I can feel really kind of not good about things in a small place and in a big place, and the same with feeling good about things. We've played some bigger gigs that have been, where we felt really good and comfortable, and generally the sound is taken care of by we have a sound man and now a monitor guy, but the PA companies that set up these gigs, they've been doing it for a while with today's technology, and generally you can expect that they're going to make it sound like you're used to, with the use of monitors. So you don't really hit too many new experiences sound-wise. It's really only venue-wise.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have like a cherry picker or anything like that. We're not like trying to emote to the back row, and touch when you're playing at a big, huge venue like Molson Park or something like that. I mean, you're not, I'm singing for the rest of the guys in the band, and Paul's playing guitar for the five of us, and we're, that's what we're thinking about. And then, then the big speakers take care of the rest. They get all that stuff and throw it out to everyone who cares to listen. And so, I mean, when you look at it that way, it's much easier, I mean,
Well, that's good. Probably the best way to do it, because it'll be a lot less posing. You'll be a lot less likely to be trying to entertain. I know Mick Jagger says, I've got 75,000 people in front of me. I feel I've got to put a show on to entertain this guy in the back row. And so you see what you get. And it's a big show, and the music is secondary, although on the last tour I thought it was still all together, but in past tours it wasn't. And a lot of bands are like that, so I think you got the right attitude to just play for yourselves, and then hopefully the people out there will also get the benefit of it.
Yeah, we're anything but the consummate entertainers, I mean, if anything, we sometimes, been a bit too internal on stage. But if we're entertained, then chances are it'll be an entertaining show.
Well, there's always, I mean, you can take it too far. I think Blue Rodeo at times take it too far. They just, they're not going to worry about that, and I think they may be a bit too lax. Although the last show I saw them, funnily enough, at the Horseshoe just the week before you guys, was very, very tight and very, very, very good. But I mean, every time I've seen you guys play, there was huge sweat all over the place. So as long as you keep that up. Who's speaking of Three Pistols? Who's doing the background vocals there? What's going on?
Paul.
That's me. Yeah. Why?
It came out of nowhere. I didn't hear a lot of backing vocals throughout the album. Then I hear this sort of a very different voice.
Yeah, Paul wasn't into it as much this time around.
No, don't know why.
And he's got that killer voice too.
But Three Pistols, that's one of the tunes we've been playing a long time. So that background part is a part that I've sung for a long time, so it would have felt weird not to do it. And the other tunes on the record, I guess, I don't know. I just was thinking more about what I was playing on the guitar, so that when it got down to actually recording the tunes and wondering whether we should put backgrounds or not, what I could come up with I didn't really like, so there's only a couple spots in there where, so maybe.
Keep it spare.
You gotta keep singing for that solo record. Gotta keep your voice in shape.
Is it a more personal album? I mean, Fiddler's Green, I think, is a pretty personal song for you, isn't it?
Yeah.
Talking about your sister.
Yeah, I guess it's somewhat personal. That was a song that we played more down there just to get it on tape because it felt good. And once we did, then there was sort of an, a movement to get it on the record from within the band. And yeah, that's probably the closest example to something that's somewhat personal. But I don't know. You can't get. It's a real fine line between giving people a taste of your personal life or something like that, and then wallowing in some kind of self-pity or something like that. So you got to kind of make the song a little bit accessible to other people. And I don't know.
I guess all songs are personal ultimately. I mean, you come up with them and they reflect your experience to some degree, like Little Bones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're they're more just they more just represent moments in time. That's that's a lot of times a song isn't necessarily how someone feels in a universal sense. It just represents what they were thinking at a certain time, and you can't really get nailed down for that. I don't think that's sort of the privilege that you're afforded. That you can, and that's what Little Bones is about. It's about a snatch in time. That was the way I was feeling in that particular day, and I don't know.
How does the song happen? I mean, you obviously take care of the lyrics, but do you sort of all get together or do you come up with the guitars and sort of come up with a riff and a song and then work on it and turn it into something?
Generally, for the last since we did the first record, most of them, almost all of them, are a relatively small idea turned bigger by the band. So it could be Gordy or Johnny or Robbie or me or Gord that has some type of musical idea, and we get together and jam when we're off the road. For this last record, we had about two 1-week sessions where we just kind of got a spot in Kingston and got together and who's got ideas and let's jam them out and see what happens. And then some of them are just in between working on those ideas. Someone just starts playing something and sometimes something comes from that. But generally it's from a jam or from an idea that isn't a completed one kind of thing. So that everyone kind of throws in their few cents.
So they're all Tragically Hip songs. They're not Robbie songs. They're not Gord songs.
No, more so than now than they ever have been. I think 2 years ago, you might have been able to recognize a song that Gord wrote, as opposed to a song that Robbie wrote or Paul wrote. But it's like what I was saying about playing live. We write for the band, and when everyone's writing, you're keeping the band in mind. And I don't think we have any idea, any sort of pat formula for what that is, but I think we're all very conscious of, I know when I'm writing lyrics, it would be difficult for me to write an incredibly personal song that the rest of the band couldn't relate to, because they've got to play it and they've got to feel it. But I lost my train of thought. Brain bone is not connected to the mouth bone.
Well, it will be after you've done another million of these interviews.
No, this is the only one we're going to do.
Yeah. Okay, Road Apples. How did you happen to pick Road Apples as a title?
We went through a pretty complicated 3-ballot voting system to narrow it down. We had compiled about 40 potential record titles over the last year just for something to do. And it came down to the time when we needed a title. And we threw around a few, and they either met with, complete, misunderstanding or something like that. So we ended up settling on Road Apples because we thought it was a great title, And anyone in Canada that's played road hockey knows what a road apple is. It's a frozen piece of horse turd. And I guess we kind of are sticking our chins out a bit for a good, big, huge walloping by someone who doesn't like the record, because you'll say, frozen pieces of horse shit, you're damn right it is, or something like that. But, that's, we like that idea.
Well, it opens it up for some interesting promotional ideas anyway.
Yeah.
Now, because of the 9-day difference in release dates, I understand that the reason why you're not all over the Junos this year, but you are at least up for the Canadian Entertainer of the Year award, and I suppose in a way that's winning that would be a more meaningful thing than having a record sale dictate who wins a certain category, or a bunch of mealy-mouthed critics sitting around saying, yeah, okay, well, that's a good record. This one's actually voted on by the fans.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That'd be good.
Yeah, I can get behind awards like that, I mean, when the people are voting, then that's cool, because they have no idea how many records you've sold or anything like that. There's no chart, that's showing them that. They're just saying, well, this is a band I like. The battle of the bands aspect is something that doesn't sort of sit well with me. I don't really like the idea in bars with new bands, and I don't really like the idea later on. I mean, it's just something that you can't compare. And in Canada these days, there are so few bands that I don't really see the point in trying to distinguish them, or give one band more distinction over another. I mean, I'd rather see, sort of something like, as opposed to one big Juno award show, see some kind of big, a weekly show that showcases Canadian bands, much along the lines like Night Music that's coming out of the States with David Sanborn. I mean, I'd like to see something like that. Because when we're on the road, we meet other bands, like the guys in the Northern Pikes or the Pursuit or the Phantoms or the Skydiggers or anything like that. We're not like, getting them down to arm wrestle with them. We're like having a good time and hanging out, and there's no competitive sort of nature about our relationships with those other bands. And the competition aspect seems to lie with people outside that whole circle. And I guess, it's not really a complaint because other bands don't feel that way necessarily either. They would welcome a Juno Award, and I would welcome a Juno Award voted on by the people any day. No doubt about it. It's nice. It's flattering.
Well, winning most promising doesn't hurt.
Didn't hurt at all, Like, it's like, people will say, well, where's your beef? Where's your complaint? And I don't really have one. It just that, awards are kind of, they're kind of hard to accept.
Okay. Anything that you'd like to get across about the album? I mean, here you have a forum to talk to a lot of people. Is there anything you'd like to say? I mean, we've covered a lot of material, but is there something that you think you'd like? How would you sum up the album?
I don't know. Listen to it through. Don't look for the big smash hit single. Just listen to the record through. And keep it prominently placed in your CD catalog.
Well,
I guess it would be the same type of message. Give these songs a chance. And play it loud, I guess. If you like. If you're not allowed to play it loud, then play it quiet.
okay. Thank you very much for coming in and talking to us.
Thank you, Alan.
Great. And if there's an international band or a band from the States that's up touring or something like that, you get them on and stuff like that. And, I just, that's what I think. I mean, there are enough Canadian bands now to make it work, but you are right, because especially if you're going to do it live or something like that. I guess you wouldn't do it live, but I
think you should, though. I think that really, that's what gets the adrenaline running.
But it seems to me that the Juno Awards, especially in Vancouver this year, there's a lot of people rallying around it, and it will be it'll be a nice celebration of Canadian talent. But man, there's so many other bands out there that, and it's like that whole, you get back to the Battle of the Bands idea where, on a Monday night, a bar owner throws a Battle of the Bands competition that runs 6 weeks, and he knows it's an otherwise slow night, so he gets all the friends of the bands that are there in to drink all his cheap draft, and he pays the bands nothing, and they win the right to go on and go into the finals, and and go into the semifinals, and the bands that win get a really inflated sense of themselves far before they should. And the bands that lose, who knows what they go through, our apples couldn't beat their oranges, And I don't know whether they get disillusioned. And as I say, where's the complaint? Because these bands aren't complaining. It gives them some exposure and a gig where they might not otherwise get one. But, and if you apply that to the larger sense, they're just, Canadian bands, I think there should be more of a real concerted effort to, get all the Canadian bands sort of working with each other, and that's how you're going to create a Canadian ness about our music, you know. You know, and the weird thing about the Battle of the Bands thing too is a guy and a kid that's 16 that's out there and he's got a band going and he sees the Tragically Hip win Entertainer of the Year, so he's either thinking, okay, well, you know, he's either hating us because we don't do something that's even slightly akin to what he does, or he thinks that's what he's got to do to make it in Canada.
Right.
He's got to come up with something similar to what we're doing because that's the success formula.
Well, it is though, because you're doing what you're doing, and if you just and you're not
Young bands in
you
Canada,
guys been doing.
the bands that aren't, I mean, when you get to a certain point in Canada, there's a unit, you know, there's about 20 bands that get a lot of exposure, you know,
Right.
and they instantly become the examples of what you need to make it in Canada. And you know, there's a lot of bands out there, a lot of bands in Toronto that are not going to get to that point where they get that kind of exposure, but they still deserve some kind of exposure,
Mm-hmm.
if for no other reason than to keep everything different, you know, keep I don't know.
Maybe. Oh. Okay. Yeah. Well.
But, you know, I don't know. Now we'll probably lose the Juno.
Does this go on before or after?
Before. I think. I don't know. It's tough for the next couple of weeks because